Hello, hello, everyone. I am Ben Pick, and thank you for joining me in a live episode of Running to Write, where I give questionable writing advice through running metaphors, usually. Tonight, I'm joined by Shannon, and we're discussing Agatha Christie's novel, Death on the Nile. Before we get too deep into it, Shannon, would you mind giving yourself an intro?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Shannon. I write under the pen name S.C. Huston and the author of the Clash of Goddess series, which is having the last book come out on June 6th. I also have a YouTube channel under the name of S.C. Huston, where I publish videos about writing and my self-publishing journey and have weekly writing sprints, which you can find me there. I'm also 1/3 of the trio for the Self-Publishing Tips and Tricks podcast with Ben Pick, Running to Write, and Morgan Lee, and one half of the duo putting together the first AuthorTube writing conference, coming to the YouTube AuthorTube community in July of 2022. The deadline for that closes this Sunday, so if you wanted to present anything, make sure you get your application in before that closes. And thank you for having me here today, Ben.
Of course, it was my absolute pleasure. And sorry, I'm dealing with some of the stuff in the chat. I'm trying to say hi to everyone. Hi, Margaret. And yes, thank you. We're about to do your intro too for Margaret. So Shannon and I read Death on the Nile by Agatha Christie as a part of Margaret Pinard's May of the Moderns Readathon. So following her Victorian era readathon that she did a little while ago, these books were written or published roughly between 1901 through 1945. And I love a good murder mystery. So naturally, when the spreadsheet was shown out, I gravitated towards Agatha Christie's novel. And I hadn't read Death on the Nile before. I've read a couple of others, and we'll get to that in a moment. But for right now, Shannon, have you ever read this book before or another Agatha Christie book? I mean, has it been a while for you? I know it's been 10 years plus for me.
Yeah, it's been over 10 years since I was a teenager, and I think I was like 12, and I took one of her books, and I can't remember which one, and I made it into a screenplay. And it was actually really good. I had some people who actually wanted to put it on, but I never gave up the script. They read it, and then I took it back, and I didn't give it up because I was too, I guess, I don't know, imposter syndrome with my work. But it's been many, oh gosh, it's probably been 20 years since I've read Agatha Christie. And I thought I had read this one, but when reading it again, if it was again, I didn't recognize any of it. So either my memory is just really gone, or I didn't read this one.
Well, we do have a comment in here. As long as someone dies on some river somewhere. Now, we're going to go through a spoiler-free section at first, and then we'll dive into some more spoiler questions. But yes, Death on the Nile does, in fact, have at least one death on the Nile.
At least one.
So, yeah. So you are good there. Let's see. We got a few more in here. So, yeah, thank you, Richard. I know it's late where you are. I think when you were talking about this, you said it was after midnight or about midnight. So thank you for being here. We really appreciate it.
He's trying to feel more British by watching us. Uh-oh. Am I frozen, or is Ben frozen? Please let me know. Okay, it looks like I am not frozen. Hey, you guys, someone please let me know if it's me, because if not, I'm going to drop out and try and come back in again.
There we go. So I do apologize. As you can see, we are live, so there will be some mistakes and some issues. My internet just tanked. So again, let me say hello, Cool Gamer. You are also awesome, and thank you for joining us. And let's see here. We have Margaret Pinard, who, like I said, is the instigator and the organizer for this entire May of the Moderns event. So
instigator makes her feel like she was like, hey, read this, like prodding us.
No. But
no, I know what you're
all in good fun.
I love the word choice.
What were your initial impressions of this novel?
So I remember liking Agatha Christie quite a bit when I was younger. I remember devouring a lot of her books. And I actually watched the movie Death on the Nile, the one that just came out recently. So I already knew a lot of stuff that I thought was supposed to happen. I knew that they had combined some of the characters for the movie. So I was kind of expecting a lot of that. But when I started this novel, it was boring as freak. And I was like, oh my God, I have to read this. I thought I liked Agatha Christie. Now, once it got past a certain point, it picked up and it was much better. But it was a little bit hard getting through that beginning part.
That's fair. And I completely agree with you. I think we'll have some, we have a few questions later on about the style that was told, but to sort of summarize, I absolutely agree with you. They went through each individual character who was going to be on the boat. They told their backstory, and it was kind of cool to see them in their home environments or preparing for this journey. But yeah, there wasn't really anything driving us along. It was kind of like, it felt like an information dump for characters.
Mm-hmm. And Holiday said, this is my fear. Richard Holiday says, this is my fear. The prose will be crusty. And what I would say is there's not a whole lot of prose. It's like mostly dialogue that you're learning about everybody. It's just so much information at once. You're like, what is important? What do I have to remember? And you do meet a lot of characters who don't end up being on the Karnak later. So,
although it was kind of interesting how the characters were so intertwined. So we would start in somebody's person. We would start in somebody, having lunch or whatever, or discussing something, and then they would say that they're going on the boat, and they would switch to somebody else's point of view, and they would also be having lunch. Or they were doing whatever they're doing throughout the day, and then they would reference the previous person who just spoke and be like, "Oh, that's my cousin. My cousin is also going to Egypt. We might see them on the boat, or this, that, and the other, or I need to get the boat to stop X from happening, or something along those lines." So it reinforced the characters well, but there were a lot of characters to go through at first.
Yes. And I wouldn't say that there was even a lot of scenery, because I felt like the book could have used more scenery to include the background of Egypt, especially when they're in Egypt. I kind of missed not getting into the scenery there.
Ooh. Hello, Vixen of Fiction. So that is Nia the Vixen of Fiction, and I do a different YouTube video with her called Scripting the Book, which compares the books to the movies. And we're sort of going to be doing a little bit of that at the end, comparing the movie, which you watched, to the book itself, assuming we have time. So we'll see. Time permitting, we will kind of be...
if not, it might be a great one for Nia to pick up for your guys's.
Certainly. Then which characters did you like most and which did you like least?
Okay, which one?
There were a lot out there.
Yeah, so my favorite one, I don't know if I had a favorite one, but probably the one I liked the most would have been Cornelia. She just was down to earth, and of all of the characters, she's probably the only one who had nothing to hide, and she didn't hide anything, but she also looked at everything as positive, the best part, or she didn't try to look at the negative of everything that could happen, and she always looked at the positive stuff. Which I'm a very, what I consider realistic person, but people say it's a negative person or whatever, but I'm saying realistic. So I like that she was the other side of that.
That's fair. Yeah, I really liked Mrs. Bowers. I felt that she had a strong character. She had strong character traits, and she stood out in every scene she was a part of, particularly because she wasn't involved. She felt neutral to everyone else that was going on, all the drama that was going on. Obviously when the body count started to rise, she became engaged, but she had no direct connection to any of the drama on the boat for the fact that she was in the scenes. So she stood out by not being involved. So she was just a really good neutral party. She wasn't trying to solve anything. And then I just didn't really like any of the Otterborns. So Mrs. Otterborn was she was kind of, she felt older. Not quite like she was a mother. Her daughter was fully grown, kind of taking care of her. So that put me in mind of almost like a grandmother's age. But she's a writer on the boat, taking her vacation, living a lavish lifestyle, and then her daughter kind of has to take care of her in every scene. So I didn't really like their characters or their dynamic really.
And what's so funny is that they were my favorite characters in the movie. They changed them up a little bit, and I really liked them in the movie. But probably as far as who I didn't like, I'd probably choose Andrew Pennington. He was just a snake to me.
Okay, that's completely fair. I liked how blatant and obvious he was. Like you knew what he wanted in every scene. You knew what his goals were. You knew exactly what he was going to do to get them. And
only because we knew his background, but from the other perspectives characters, he was being a snake.
So Margaret asks, was there ageism in my portrayal of this granny character? No, so she's not really, granny character isn't the best way of putting it. She's just a mother with a full-grown daughter. And it wasn't ageism. She just...
She didn't treat Rosalie very good.
Yeah, she didn't treat the other characters very good. And there was already like this older grandmother character who was living a rich, lavish lifestyle and who was just completely mistreating everyone around her. So the Otterborn character was like that character, but she just wasn't to the same degree. So she was she was a lesser version of a character that was already present. Cool. I don't know. Were there any other characters you really liked or disliked?
It's funny because I didn't really like Lynette either. So, and I'm trying to stay away from saying too much about the main characters, but I watched the movie first before I read this. Even if I had read it years ago, I didn't remember. And she came off a little more likable, just a tad bit more likable in the movie. But seeing her in the book and getting a little bit more in her mind, I'm like, I didn't much like her at all. I mean, she's definitely not an angel. And of course, what she does, we're still in spoiler-free section. So, of course, what she does to kick off all the events is her fault. I'm not saying she should be killed for it, but it is her fault. So, yeah.
And how much were the mustaches discussed? So were they? Sorry, we'll just do one little thing for about the movies because the books don't really go too much into the mustaches or the facial features. But were there a lot of mustaches in the movie?
Well, they made a whole deal out of it because Poirot was in a war at the beginning of the movie and got blown up, and his face got damaged, and his girl said, well, you'll just have to wear a mustache. So that he wears a mustache. But at the end of the movie, he shaves it off. It's supposed to be some type of, I don't know, redemption for him. I'm not really sure what that was supposed to be about. So it was just kind of like, I don't get it.
Yeah, and that's a really good point in the comments. How was the POV? Did we hop heads? Oh, we absolutely hopped heads.
Yes.
In the first part especially, you would go a page in somebody's head. They would be having lunch. They'd be having a conversation. And then we'd switch to somebody else who, a different character who would ultimately end up on the boat. And then we'd just go through that until we got through every single character. And then once we got to the boat, it's a little bit more stagnant.
It chilled out a little bit.
Yeah. And especially once the murder occurred, we were mostly in Poirot's POV for the most part. And Richard Holliday says that Andrew Pennington is so British. Wasn't Andrew Pennington? He was American.
He was American.
Yeah,
he was American.
So,
but he was related to Lynette. But then Lynette was also American. She just grew up in London.
Mm-hmm. And this is something that you touched on earlier. But what did you think of the setting? Too descriptive? Not descriptive? Not descriptive enough?
Not enough. I mean, I could have cared less in the beginning when she was talking about Woad Hall, which we actually got a lot of Woad Hall, which has nothing to do with the murder. Or Karnak, which is the steamer that they're on, or Egypt, which would be a beautiful setting to explain, to describe. I would have loved to have seen that. And we didn't get any of that. I mean, we got a little bit, but it was very, very little. And what we did was very stereotypical, which for that time period, maybe that's what was kind of okay. But for us today, we're like, okay, this is not what I want to know about this setting. I want to know different stuff. I don't care about the stereotypical view.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was a scene where they were exploring these caves or these tombs, and they were even wandering down a canyon which was kind of a climactic scene. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't tell who was really doing what or where anything was going. He was standing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if it wasn't for the movie where I saw how they envisioned it, I don't think I would have been able to. They would have been just all standing in space and stuff just coming from out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. So.
Oh, yeah. And then once the murder does happen, there's just like the hopping heads moment. The detective sits down and maps out where every single room is located on the boat or who is occupying each room of the boat. And yes, that's something that's very important. But the way that it was done and where it was placed, I feel like if they did the character introductions like they did at the beginning, and then they saved that for later, and then they rotated through who was who was on the boat and what rooms they were in, that might have flowed a little bit better than kind of stopping the moment to essentially draw a map and then figure out who was in each of the rooms. Now, as for the writing itself, I thought that it was very clean. Like you said, it was mostly dialogue, so it was very quippy. It was, very, very fast. The action was also very fast. But again, it was not the best in terms of setting a scene. So there were plenty of times where I didn't know where a certain person was standing or what the room looked like, which is very important in these scenes where people ended up getting murdered.
Yeah.
Yeah, they want us to redo or rewrite. I would never take it upon myself or anyone else to rewrite an Agatha Christie classic. This book stands on alone. I mean, there are certainly, I have to imagine that there are remakes and redoings of this, but I don't know if I would really want to read it. I mean, there's Hyperion, which is the first thing I can think of that is a redoing of the Canterbury Tales in science fiction, and I was not a big fan of that. So I think the classics should stay classic. You can try and redo them as best you can, try and bend them into your own, but a lot of times, I don't know, I feel like they kind of fail. And that shifts right into how well did the writing style flow?
I thought the writing style was fine, honestly. It, like you said, it moved. It kept moving, which kind of didn't help in the beginning because you were being thrown all these characters and it just kept on moving along. And you're like, you didn't have a chance to soak in that character before you're moving to the next scene. I mean, that first chapter has 12 parts and you're meeting 12 characters, 12 new characters. Yeah.
Potential suspects.
Right. And then there's some characters in there that that never appear later. You know, they're part of the backstory of those 12 characters. So
I'm so shit. Okay. Sorry. Margaret just put a comment about retellings, and Shannon, your stories are retellings of classic myths. They aren't a retelling of some, like, you're not retelling a Sherlock story. You're not retelling this classic literature story. You're retelling myths and bending it in a different way. I feel the same way about Disney movies. I think that you can take a classic tale like The Little Mermaid. I would love a retelling of that. I was just on author Lauren Adele and Nicole by Mage. I was just on their YouTube channel and talking about this exact same thing. And I fully think that that's great. I just wouldn't want to, I don't know how I would feel about a remake of like Frankenstein or some kind of classic literature that is so tied into a specific time and a specific author that I would be so daunted by trying to even think about recreating it.
I did not take that negatively in any way, so don't worry about me.
Sure. And yeah, as for me, I think that it works. I really liked Agatha Christie's style. I think that in a modern retelling, we will probably have the murder scene first, and then we will work backwards and be like, oh, these are all the potential suspects. And we'll do a really quick, montage of who they are and where they were, what rooms they're in, their personalities, etc. And then we'll kind of work backwards from the murder, as opposed to giving us all the characters and then showing us a murder and then trying to figure out the whodunit.
So it's funny you bring that up because what I remembered, and I looked into it, and it's true, is that most of Poirot's novels, they start at the crime scene and then deviate from there to the different characters, where this one is a different structure by itself. So I think it's just this one, perhaps.
There is another one. I'll get to it later. I have an answer because it involves my favorite Agatha Christie novel. So there is a different one that's also like this. One? No, it's not Poirot.
Okay, so yeah, so I just looked into the Poirot detective ones.
Fair enough. Sure. That makes sense. And then, like we keep saying, the drawback is there are way too many characters to keep in our heads. Everybody's motive. A lot of the people have different motive. More than one person has motive to ultimately kill the character who dies. And so you're trying to balance and keep track of everything. But especially if you're reading, I mean, I know it's a short novel, but if you're reading over multiple days, which I did, it's very hard to sort of keep track of everyone, especially when some of their character traits are very similar. Yeah. Were there any lines or scenes which stuck out to you?
Shoot, I wrote down something and now I've lost it. I think for me, the scene that sticks out to me the most, which is the one that was actually lost in the movie, and I was a little bit sad about it, is the scene where Jackie lays out her reasonings for everything that she's doing for that moment and what she could be doing, her plans for the future. And Poirot basically says, you have this moment to make a decision to do something different, basically. Not those exact words, but basically he's telling her, you can choose this moment to walk away and do something different and have a life. And it's a very touching moment that I think works well with the entire book. And they actually take that scene kind of out of the movie. There's something similar to it, but just not to the same depth.
So what about you? Oh, yeah. I I have two moments. So there was during the introduction scenes, I have it written down right here. One of the characters, I didn't write down who because I wasn't thinking at the time, but they said, "I do hope there won't be any trouble," and they were referring to her upcoming trip to Egypt. And I thought that was a very funny kind of nod to the reader. I know that this is in the 1900s, and the stories weren't as complex. The murder mysteries weren't as complex. They kind of lay everything out there for you. And I thought that was a really fun nod to the reader. Although in, again, modern day times, you would never get away with anything like that, especially early on. And I feel like the boulder scene really could have been a lot more of a red herring than it was. So we can discuss it more in the spoiler session. We are almost up there. So I don't want to dive too deeply into this, but there is a scene which involves a boulder, and it just kind of happens. And there isn't really much description about it. There isn't really much build up leading to it or fallout afterwards. And it's not like it was trying to, or it's not like there was really much of a reason to streamline through it so quickly. I just felt like it was a missed opportunity.
It's funny that because one of the questions that I brought up that I wanted you to add that you said you put in there specifically, that's my answer, to deal with that boulder scene.
Mm-hmm. So. Well, that's more in the spoiler section, so we'll be getting to it. Then the last of the spoiler-free section, how does it compare to Agatha Christie's other novels? You mentioned Poirot. Do you remember other?
I don't remember the actual novels themselves, but that was what I wanted to look up, was like, okay, how is this structure set up? And yeah, that's I guess I already said my answer for that one, because that's what I wrote down for my answer. But yes, her other Poirot detective novels all have the crime scene at the front, and then it's and then it deviates to the characters and their motives and all that. So yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. My favorite Agatha Christie novel was And Then There Were None. I just felt like that was such a it was such a tightly knit book, and that was one of my really first Agatha Christie's that I didn't get it, but my brother read it at the same time, and he sort of explained to me, wow, like I should have known who the killer was based on like this one specific scene. And so after that, that is the book that taught me how Agatha Christie writes and how she sets up her various scenes and sets up her various red herrings. And that is my quintessential Agatha Christie novel that I can think of. And so this one is different. That one is very self-contained. Everyone's in one single house. Here, it's a little bit more open. So there was some moving around. It almost felt like an adventure at a certain point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because, well, I'll save it for the spoiler section, but there is a reason for the primary murder person to be kind of on the run. And so, yes, they were all in a boat, but the boat was largely moving until they kept it overnight in one specific place where the murder takes place. But up until that point, we're going all over Egypt. We're going on multiple, it felt almost like planes, trains, and automobiles. They were doing different vehicles. And then finally they end up on the boat, which is where the death ultimately takes place. And so it felt kind of like an adventure that also happened to have a murder in it, which then led into the mystery, which then leads to somewhere else. And I feel like this is it's a different style that I appreciated. Again, it's not my favorite Agatha Christie novel, but this is up there. And so now we are switching to spoilers.
There was the one question that
sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. We can move it to the spoiler section because then I can say more. But
sure. Let's do it.
About the tropes.
Yeah, that's the first one in the spoiler section.
Oh, okay. I thought, yeah, okay. Sorry. I thought we were going to put it in the first section, but that's okay. I can say more.
Fair enough. What tropes did you find in the novel?
So I actually found two, with one having two examples of it. So the first one was the love triangle. So you have the main character is Lynette. She's our wealthy millionaire at this time. I think she is. She's young. She's 20 years old. And she basically steals her best friend's guy and marries him within a couple months of meeting him. So that's the one triangle there. There's also the triangle between Cornelia and what's the two? It was the was it Mr. Ferguson and Tim Allerton, I think it was. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of like a very like subplot. But there was kind of a little bit of a love triangle there. And then there's the tragic love story a la Romeo and Juliet, where the two star-crossed lovers end up losing their lives at the end.
True. That's fair. I went a different route with this in that I found that there was a sizable amount of racism in this book. And yes, I know it's a product of the early 1900s, but there was a lot of uncomfortable phrases to read. I will say that. There were some very uncomfortable generalizations of people from certain countries. When they were in Egypt, they weren't necessarily the most respectful. And I felt like there were a bunch of characters who sort of fit into specific roles. Like Lynette herself is this entitled rich girl who is just on this lavish adventure. I've already mentioned how there was the older woman who was mean to everyone around her. You have a bunch of different people. I mean, Poirot himself has felt kind of like a detective trope. So there are a lot of different things in there. And now it's time to talk about something more complicated. So what did you think of the red herrings within the pivotal scene?
Oh my gosh, let me see. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 red herrings. And I don't even think that's all of them that were put into the book. So when you said the pivotal scene, which one are you talking about exactly?
I mean, do we want to go full spoilers? How deep do you want to go in this?
I am fine with going as deep as you want to go. We're in spoiler section, so we might as well talk about it.
All right. So I'm sorry if you haven't read the book. We are going to spoil the who gets murdered. Obviously, we already know that Lynette gets murdered, but we're going to spoil what?
She's only one who gets murdered.
Yes.
One of 5 deaths.
3? I thought it was.
Well, 3 are murdered.
Well, 3 are. Yeah. You're right. 3 are murdered, and then there's 2.
Technically, the 4th one is murdered too.
All right. And so the pivotal scene I thought of as the scene which became everyone's alibi. Oh, sorry. I'll put up the banner. You're right. Here be spoilers. Okay. There's a scene in which the primary suspect, so again, you had this love triangle between Lynette, who is the famous, rich, powerful woman, and she's the person who's murdered. She's the first death on the Nile, and she ended up stealing her closest friends. I felt like they were really close friends at the beginning, and she ended up stealing her close friend's fiance.
His fiance, yep.
Yes. And so there's this one pivotal scene where the fiance is drunk. Sorry, the fiance is gambling in a room with a couple of other people, and then the fiance is drunk, and she gets really mad at Lynette's the woman who was murdered. Her friend gets really drunk one night and shoots her former fiance, and so that's because of that scene. They are then alibied out. Yeah.
She shoots him in the leg. So I think there was a couple of definitely red herrings that led up to this, because you have Tim Allerton didn't like Poirot coming around his mom. And you knew that his mom didn't like the girl that he talked to through letters, Joanna Southwood. And then there was also this idea that there was jewelry missing all the time. And the one big thing that's in the book is Lynette always messing with her pearls, and those come up missing. So that's all part of that scene. Like, okay, who took the pearls? Was that part of the death scene? And so I think that was one huge red herring, because that didn't end up having anything to do with her death. But it did take you down a path of like, oh, okay, so whoever took them probably killed her.
Right. That was a really good one. I felt like in some of the pivotal scenes, they were almost protesting too much about why certain suspects couldn't have been the murderer. And that immediately, I never pieced together how the murder happened, but I was able to piece together who murdered them, who murdered Lynette. So.
And at what point did you put that all together? Like, because I think maybe we shouldn't talk about it, because that's our next question, right? The foreshadowing.
Yeah. Let's do that then. Do you think the murdered and the murderers were foreshadowed well, or did you figure out right away? And I said yes and no. So I figured out exactly who had murdered her. I never figured out the how I never figured out the how. And so there is a very big point here. Again, I don't know how much I want to say of that, but just in a specific scene, it sort of rang as false to me because of how they were all acting and how out of character it felt. So that's all I'll say on that.
And I saw the movie, so I already knew what it was. But if I hadn't seen the movie, the parts that told me about it was when Poirot was first talking to Jacqueline, that Jackie, when he was having that conversation with her about, choose a different path. You can choose a different path right now. She said that she likened herself to the moon and Lynette to the sun, so that when the sun came out, it covers the moon. And that's why Simon went to Lynette over her. And then later on, Simon says something to Poirot about Lynette being the sun. And I was like, so it's almost like Simon and Jackie had this conversation. But if they were talking about Lynette being the sun, was that a conversation in which they were like yelling, you're arguing, and that came up? Or is it because they're already in cahoots doing something?
Right. Yeah, again. And I mean, this is completely spoiler. So again, final warnings, complete spoilers. But Lynette is extremely affluent. She has the money to go around. And because Jackie was a jilted lover, Lynette took her new husband, Simon, and they're now fleeing Jackie's pursuit. So they're trying to do all kinds of different things to give her the slip. And they are trying to go on various boats. And
like, she's going to every place they're going. She's just showing up and just looking at them.
Right.
Stalking them. She's not making any moves, but she's stalking them.
Yeah, exactly. And they even set off decoys. And Lynette does have some, Jackie does have some money, but she's not nearly as wealthy as Lynette. And I figure the only way that I could make it make sense is that her ability to hunt down and stalk Lynette seemed to stretch the realms of plausibility.
Yeah, money-wise. And then How did she know? Because the very last step that Simon and Lynette did was that they put out that they were staying 10 days in that one hotel in Egypt, but they skipped out and went onto the Karnak. And then Jackie showed up on the Karnak. So how did Jackie know to show up on the Karnak? And I thought about that too.
Exactly. And then once between the pivotal scene and the whole stalking in general, that kind of opened up to me and revealed who the killers were. So it was Jackie working with Simon together. Mm-hmm. Sorry, spoilers again, but I never pieced together how they did it. I kind of knew. So there's like an empty bottle of nail polish that was used as a distraction. And I never really pieced together how that was used until Poirot explained everything. But I kind of knew exactly what scene. I understood what happened I understood and saw that scene as, it was just a complete alibi. I just didn't really piece together how it worked.
So basically, when Jackie shot Simon in the leg, Jackie went into hysterics. So she had to be calmed down by the nurse, Miss Bowers, who gave her morphine and knocked her out. So she was alibied for the murder because the murder of Lynette happened sometime between the time that Simon was shot and within 2 hours. Then Simon was basically with the doctor, but there was a 5-minute window
where he wasn't actually shot.
When he wasn't actually shot because Jackie didn't actually shoot him. It was all faked so that he could run up, go kill Lynette, and then go back to the salon or wherever it was they were at, and then shoot himself for real. Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing is that by the end of the book, he almost basically died from
that wound
injury. Yeah.
Yes, he kept getting a fever, and it was getting worse and worse, and the bullet was still stuck in him. And I was like, man, you went through all that. I would have shot myself somewhere else.
Well, I mean, he had to shoot where it seemed like she had shot him, so.
It was in his knee. I probably would have done it like on the side of the leg, so it just grazed the leg or something.
Well, in a 5-minute window, we didn't have much time to consider. I know. Is there anything you questioned about the plot that didn't make sense?
Okay, to me, that was the boulder scene. Because, and I think what you were talking about is a little bit different. I think what you were saying, yeah, that's all good. But one thing I thought of, in the boulder scene, someone pushes a boulder. They're visiting, I don't remember the name of the place. It's one of the places where it has the tall statues of Ramses, I think, or whatever, and his wife, Nefertiti, or I don't remember who it was, whatever. It was tall statues, and they're in and out of these catacombs. There's not a lot of explanation of the scene, so you don't really know what it looks like. But Lynette and Simon are standing together, and somewhere from above, a boulder comes down. Simon pulls Lynette out of the way so she don't get squashed. Well, why? If he just let her get squashed, the whole thing would have been done.
True. I mean, I can understand that. I read that as almost a gut reaction, and I'm
Yeah, but
still
he killed her
surprised.
later.
True, and I'm still surprised that after that moment, like, that he had the courage to go through with it again, because he almost watched her die in front of him, and so then he has the not courage, but the determination to pull the trigger directly, to be the one that kills her. Like that felt, you're right, that feels kind of off.
Yes. Why not just let the boulder kill her? Now you've got everything solved. Now you can go marry Jackie, and nobody goes to jail. Everybody lives.
Mm-hmm.
So,
The one explanation I can think of that is that he didn't know that Jackie wasn't up there, maybe. So he might have thought that was Jackie just going over the top and just deciding to act on her own and take Lynette out. And so he doesn't want it to obviously be her.
well, the only thing I could think of is if it was so obvious that he could have saved her, that's why he had to save her. But none of that's explained in the book. You don't really know what that looked like.
Yeah. I also thought it was kind of extraneous to have a killer on the boat. It makes sense because there's a second detective who's on the boat that Poirot kind of has back and forth with, and they work together. So you have this team of skilled detectives who are trying to solve the murder. And if it was introduced as a reason why he was on the boat, because otherwise, a regular detective would be very unlikely to be on there, which I would have had a problem with too. But I feel like there could have been somebody else that he could bounce ideas off of, who isn't necessarily a full-on detective.
Right.
And then that whole killer thing, it was introduced. That was one of the many red herrings that were there.
Yeah.
And then it just gets resolved of Poirot's like, oh, this guy, there was a telegram that was intercepted, and this guy is the murderer that you're looking for. And it was introduced in like one sentence, and then at the very end of the book, he's like, oh yeah, problem solved. And that's really it.
I mean, for a moment, they thought maybe that's why Lynette was killed, because she intercepted one of his I want to say Instagram telegrams. She intercepted one of his telegrams, which was a coded message, but she didn't know. And they thought, well, maybe, it was supposed to be about bombs and guns and stuff like that, but it talked about veggies, potatoes, and stuff like that.
It's all in code.
So yeah, so they tried to throw it in there, maybe because she intercepted the message that this guy also killed her, but it didn't. That thread did not last very long, and I think it was I think it was just thrown in there to do another
red the drama.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like if we had one fewer character, we didn't have that as a plot point, then we could have expanded on some other places that were a little bit trimmer, and that would have flushed this out. But again, I am a nobody, and I should not be criticizing Agatha Christie. But at the same time, I feel like that would have also made it a little better. I don't know. That's just my 2 cents. Do you believe that Lynette Doyle was right or wrong in her actions to pursue Simon Doyle?
So the portrayal in the movie, So in the movie, the portrayal was shown a little bit different. It was shown that when Simon met Lynette, it kind of seemed like a mutual attraction to each other, and that's in the movie. So in my mind, I'm like, it happens all the time. You're with somebody, you might be with them because you're comfortable with them. Maybe you're not really that in love, and then you meet someone else. I mean, you see it all the time. Or you just meet someone else, and you're like, well, I really click with this person better. If it's before marriage and all that, I mean, a lot of people think, okay, this is okay. So in the movie, I was like, okay, I mean, it's a little shady to do that to your friend. I would never date any of my friends, guys, ever. And so that was a little bit shady. In the book, though, Lynette at the time, Lynette Ridgway, right? She's used to getting what she wants. And it's not like she's like puts her foot down and like, give it to me now. It's not like that, but she just says, let's do this. And it happens because she has money, and people want to make things happen for her because she has money. So she's never been used to not getting what she wants. And in the book, you see the minute she meets Simon, she thinks, oh, Jackie's lucky. So then later on, Jackie explains how Lynette kept coming after Simon. And Simon's like, I don't know what to do. And that's when they hashed their plan where Simon would go ahead and marry her because Simon really wanted the money. Jackie could have cared less, but Simon wanted the money. So in the book, she comes off more as the fiend, I guess, where I would say she was wrong in her action. Either way, I would say she was wrong. In the movie, it seemed like maybe it was a little more mutual, but in the book, it was not mutual at all. She went after what she wanted, and she wasn't going to stop without getting what she wanted.
That's fair. I completely agree. I think that she was absolutely wrong to go after her close friend, best friend. I go back and forth about how close Lynette and Jackie were, but it seemed at the beginning like they were really, really close, best friends almost. Mm-hmm. And it seemed completely inappropriate for her to then pursue the man that her close friend is engaged to. And the one counter to that point is that when we're in the introduction scene, I got the feeling that Jackie was a lot more into Simon than Simon was into her, just in the way that I read it. Because she was completely doting over him, and he just kind of seemed like he was there. And maybe if we got more scenes leading up to it, maybe that was intentional, so that it makes more sense that he would potentially leave her to pursue Lynette, seemingly for the money, so that way it all works out in the story. But I just felt like, I feel like I don't quite know where I'm going with that, but if I feel like if it were expanded out and Simon were just a little bit more into Jackie, then it would feel like Lynette is completely in the wrong. But as the story was written, it felt like you said, where Simon sort of might have reciprocated a little bit until we get the very end point where, no. She was completely pursuing, Lynette was completely pursuing Simon, and Simon wanted nothing to do with her. And he kept telling that to Jackie. And then he finally decided that he would let Lynette pursue him so he could marry her and then kill her off for the money.
Now, there is one thing that I will add, which is a little bit of motivation that Agatha Christie put there in the beginning. In the beginning, Lynette is engaged to a Lord Windlesham. And she realizes in conversation with him that she is like the queen. But if she marries him, she is now going to be the consort, or, she'll be below him because he's got money. He's got his wealth. He's got his position in society. And she realizes that if she marries him, she's going to lose that. And I think that kind of says in the background, what that says is if she marries a peer of her society, because women give to men in this society, she's going to lose that leverage. Whereas if she chooses someone who's below her in status, she gets to stay the queen.
Yeah. Completely valid. Again, Lynette didn't deserve to die. She was just a really, really bad friend.
Yeah.
Why has Jackie chosen to tell Hercule Poirot parts of the story leading up to and following the Doyles around and planning to kill them?
So I think for the overall story structure, she does it to set up the idea that if she says this is what she's going to do, and it's something, as fiendish as murdering someone, then it's not going to be true. So it gives Poirot perhaps the idea, well, she's not really going to do this. She just loves too much. But it could also be that she was looking for some way to redeem herself and get out of it. I don't know. What do you think?
I agree. I think that by setting herself up as the most obvious target, most obvious suspect, and then trying to get that solid alibi that immediately points the magnifying glass away from her. And then, like you said, it might also be that she was looking to get him to say the right words that would convince her that it's a terrible idea and that she shouldn't do it. At that point, it's probably too late because Simon's already married to Lynette. So no matter what, she was going on a certain path. And then it might also be that she just wanted to take a victory lap. Like, this is what I'm going to do. This is why I'm going to do it. Try and stop me.
Yeah.
Do you believe that Jackie is innocent or guilty of the murders? And I think this was one of your questions. So do you mean the murders later on, or Lynette, the murder of her murdering Lynette?
So my idea is that the way she sets it up, the way Jackie sets it up, is that everything she did was because this is what Simon was going to do, regardless of what she did, and that she had to step in and help him out, or he was going to end up getting caught. And so she felt like she had to step in because of her love for him and help him out with these murders. So if you're going off of her idea, do you think she's still guilty? Because I don't think she looked at herself as being guilty, honestly.
I mean, absolutely. They planned this murder. Simon could have taken the opportunity to just rebuke Lynette entirely. And yes, that would have meant that him and Jackie would have had a harder life, because at that point, they asked Lynette for a favor to get this property of land that they would take care of, and that would be a source of income for them. So they would be throwing that away, and they didn't really have a future aside from that. But when it comes down to it, they planned out a murder. They planned it well in advance, because they decided to get Simon to then marry Lynette, and then they were going to kill her. So they had months and months to plan this out. And yeah, sure, there were 2 other murders that happened later because people were in the wrong place watching the wrong thing. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, yes, premeditated murder automatically puts Jacqueline in the wrong. She's clearly guilty. You know, at the final murder she commits is, murder-suicide, because she doesn't want Simon to go to jail. She doesn't want to live without him. And so, she's guilty of everything, really. I think the only murder that Simon did then was of Lynette. So Simon did the original murder of Lynette, and then everything else was Jackie. So yeah, both of them are completely guilty.
And here, I think there's actually a streak. There's something in Jackie, because remember at the beginning of the book when Lynette's talking with Joanna, and Joanna says, "Oh yeah, the minute you lose your money, I'm going to drop you because that's just the person I am." And and she's like, "Well, what about Jackie?" And she's like, "No, Jackie, she's a true friend. I mean, she stabbed somebody. I can't remember the reason now. I wish I should have gone back. She stabbed somebody that she thought that person was in the wrong, and it was something the person was doing was wrong, but didn't deserve to be stabbed." Mm-hmm. And then at the very end, because she ends up killing the 2 other people on the boat after Lynette's killed by Simon, because both of those people were in the wrong place at the wrong time. They saw they were going to reveal who they were, and she told Poirot that killing became easier and that she could probably do it again. Oh, I did not count the suicide as a murder, but there was 4 murders.
Well, it was a murder-suicide. So she killed Simon and then just killed herself.
So there were 4 people murdered: Lynette, 2 people who were in the wrong place at the wrong time, Simon, who was killed by Jackie, and then Jackie turned the gun on herself.
Mm-hmm. What do you think of Poirot allowing Jackie to kill both Simon and herself at the end?
I'm not sure I really agree with that. So the reason why this question came about is because Poirot knew Jackie had a pair of 22s, and one of them was confiscated because that was in the death of Lynette. It was used in the death of Lynette. But there was another one. He had figured out that there was a second one based off all the searches and all the other red herrings that we saw. He knew there was another one. He knew Jackie had it, but did not say anything about it. And he knew that it was probably going to be used for Jackie to kill herself and or kill Simon. So I don't know. I don't think I really agree with that. But I don't know if that's our sensibilities now, or if that would have been accepted then or not. I don't know.
That's fair. I feel like that is Agatha Christie trying to wrap this up in a nice bow. But at the same time, the way the scene was written, I don't know that Poirot necessarily knew that he was going to kill Simon and herself until she was basically running up next to him. So
there's an actual line in the book that kind of said something to it.
Oh.
They don't remember where it's at now.
So sorry.
The
The question in the chat is a pair of 22s. The guns themselves were kind of small, so I got that they were maybe 6 shooters or something like that. They weren't very big. They didn't have much power to them, so you had to be kind of close to really kill somebody with them. And it might have just been that it was at the end of the story, and I kind of skimmed through the end of it. I didn't think I did. If I missed one tiny detail, I'm completely sorry on that.
No. I don't think it was like a straightforward line, but it was a line that was very heavily hinting that he knew she had it, and he knew that was going to happen.
Oh. All right. Well, then that might just be Agatha Christie wrapping things up in a nice bow of guilty party dies at the end. And however it happens, it happens.
Okay. So he says, I knew that she had the pair of these pistols. Miss Allerton says, and you wanted her to take that way out? Yes, but she would not take it alone. That is why Simon Doyle had died an easier death than he deserved.
Fair enough. All right. Well, then he's not a very good detective. I mean,
he just let it happen. He knew it was going to.
Yeah, fair enough. I did miss that completely. Oh, well. Yeah, then that changes my answer. I mean, I do think that is a little bit unprofessional. I mean, when they were still contained on the boat, he could have easily gone with force and just taken the gun that he knew that she had still. And that would have obviously solved the problem. You know, this seems like, again, him allowing her to take the easy way out. So I don't know. I don't know if that was the best choice by him as a as a detective. Although then again, it seemed like he wasn't really associated with the police force. It seemed like in this book, at least, he was kind of not quite on the side of the law, or he wasn't.
And I think that kind of came out because he brought in, who did he bring in? I don't remember who it was. He brought in, when he was doing the suspect list, and he brought in some of the people he knew that were attracted to each other. And he kind of cleared the dust out of the way so that they could realize they were attracted to each other, and now they could get together.
Right.
And I was like, that's not your job as a detective. You're trying to find out who killed Lynette, not try to be a matchmaker.
Yeah, there were a lot of pairings off in this in this book, or I'm assuming the movie too. I was kind of surprised at that. Like, there were multiple people who he had to tell them that, hey, you're into this person. You should act on that. What are your thoughts on the detective acting as matchmaker, or just even the number of people who paired off at the end? Because it seemed like of the 12 people, everyone who didn't die ended up with somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just thought, well, that's why I came up with the whole trope with the love triangle, and I was like, this is like kind of a romance twisted in here at the murder mystery. That the movie kind of changes a bit because like one of the people, I think it's it's Cornelia. Whoever Cornelia ends up with in the book, that person doesn't exist in the movie. They made that book. I don't remember. There's way too many names. Yeah. But Book replaces Tim Allerton. Yeah, it's Tim Allerton who ends up with Cornelia Robinson. So Tim Allerton ends up with Rosalie. I don't remember. Whatever. In the movie, he is already in love with Rosalie, so there's no need to pair them up together. But that's Book. But Book kind of replaced Tim Allerton, who doesn't appear in the movie. So fair
enough. Yeah, I was confused about the characters towards the end because we hadn't seen some of these characters for a while.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember because one of the people whose mothers died end up getting paired off with someone?
Yeah, I think that was Mrs. Allerton who died, I think. And it was Tim who got paired off, which in the movie, there is a Book and a mom, and Book is the one who dies.
But it just felt like such a weird consolation prize of, your mom just died, here, have a boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Well, we have about just under 10 minutes left, and we went through all the questions, so we can start doing a comparison of the movie. And as I didn't see the movie, I'm going to be largely quiet of this. But Shannon, how well does the novel compare to the movie? Which did you like more? Let's get that one out there.
Love the movie much better, which is kind of weird to me because most of the time I'm like, the movie is not quite as good as the book, but I like both. I usually like both mediums. But the movie did so much better in moving things along. You weren't introduced to these whole cast of characters. I mean, you're pretty much at the hotel. Everyone gets, they get married at the hotel. They go straight from the hotel to the steamer, the Karnak. And of course, Jacqueline shows up to the wedding, but the wedding's over. They're just having a party. So everybody's introduced pretty quickly. And it rolls, it moves. And they did narrow down the list of people. Colonel Race is not in there. That's the other detective who was looking for the other murderer. So Colonel Race did not show up in the movie, but the reason why they brought Book, so was it the producer who plays Poirot? He made he also directed directed the other film right before this one that also has Poirot in it. It's it's on the train. Anyone remember?
Oh, Murder on the Orient Express?
Yes, Murder on the Orient. So that was made into a movie. The same director was also in this one. The director also plays Poirot. And in the first film, Murder on the Orient Express, he made the character Book, and everyone liked Book. So he brought him along, and that he replaced Tim Allerton. But of course, Book dies. But Book is the Colonel Race. So Book kind of stands in for several characters. So there's a lot of characters that are just gotten, they're narrow it down, which makes it so much easier to follow along. And so yes, Richard Holiday got it too. Murder on the Orient Express. I have not seen that movie, so I don't know.
I've seen one of the versions of it, but again, just like this movie, there have been multiple ones and lots of dramatizations of it.
Yeah. So I actually preferred the movie better because it wasn't as boring. So
completely a fine answer. Did you feel that there were any mismatches for the actors versus the characters you picture in your head, or did some of those characters finalize or replace? Did some of the actors finalize or replace the characters that you envisioned when you were reading it?
So the doctor in the book, as I said, Doctor, is it
Brewer? It starts with a B, I think.
Yeah, I guess I didn't write down his name. So the doctor, whoever he was just a doctor who was there. He's the one that ends up with Cornelia in the book. The doctor does. So the doctor there's a doctor in the movie, and they made him Dr. Windlesham. So Windlesham is the one who was affianced to Lynette at the beginning of the book. And once she breaks off the engagement, he's gone. He's not in the story anymore. But in the movie, he's Dr. Windlesham. And it's said later, because Poirot says, well, you're not really just a doctor, are you? You're also a lord. And he says, well, I don't like to take advantage of that wealth. I want to do good. And this is why Lynette would never be happy with me, because she likes her wealth. But it was played by, oh shoot, I just had it there. It's a guy. He's a funny guy. He plays like a lot of funny Russell Brand. It's played by Russell Brand.
Yeah, I'm pulling up IMDb now.
Yeah. So I was looking at that and I was like, Russell Brand. And he plays such a serious character because he's still so in love with Lynette. And then Lynette dies and he's so brokenhearted. And I'm like, wow, that's not who I would have pictured to play that character. It worked. He did it, and it came off well, but it was not when I watched it with my husband, and my husband's like, was that Russell Brand? What? I can't see him in this role. And we're both like, yeah, he's acting all serious. We really had a hard time seeing that. But it did work. So, Gal Gadot, she was the lead actress, but I liked it better with her. Because in the book, she's Lynette. So in the book, Lynette is considered like this golden-haired, wealthy person from America, where Gal Gadot, of course, is not. But she still comes off so just, you could feel the wealth on her, the way she plays the role. She does very well. And it makes the cast more diverse. And that's one thing that the cast in the book does not have, is diversity, where the book or the movie has diversity. And I appreciated that.
Well, thank you. That is all the questions I have. We are just shy of an hour, so we can start doing our outros. Shannon, do you want to do one more promotion for the AWS, or give yourself an outro, or do whatever you want?
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for showing up today. My name is Shannon. I write under the pen name SC Houston, with the channel under the name of SC Houston. And pushing it one more time for the AWC, the first it's okay. The first AuthorTube writing conference coming to the YouTube AuthorTube community in July of 2022. We have signups still open through this Sunday. So if you're thinking about presenting anything, please sign up before the deadline. And thank you so much for this discussion, Ben.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for joining me. Thank you for reading the book. Thank you for watching the movie. You did a lot more homework than I did. And yeah, I'm very sorry. I spent a lot of time in AWS in my work life, and it's okay. Pervaded my memory.
I live it right now, so I know it, but other people may not.
Fair enough. And thank you everyone for joining us, whether you're live. Thank you for all the people in the chat. This was good times. There were some classic puns in there, and I know that you all, it's late for some of you, so thank you for joining us. And one last thing I'm going to say, as a part of, we watched Death on the Nile as a part of Margaret Pinard's May of the Moderns Readathon. And just so you know, she is coming up in 2 hours, her own buddy read of All Passion Spent. So go ahead and check that out if you aren't preparing for it. Richard, I know it's late for you, but just pull an all-nighter. You'll be perfectly fine tomorrow. And I am Ben Pick, and I want to thank all of you for being here. I have my YouTube channel at youtube.com/running-to-write. I come out with videos every Monday night, usually. Tonight is obviously an exception, at 7 p.m., where I give questionable writing advice through running metaphors. And thank you, everyone. I hope to see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.